Hi, Taavi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Perfect. So without further ado, let's start. I know that you've done a lot besides politics in digital world and the startups. So let's start from that and see how digitalization, especially at this time of COVID, is really important. And how do you think that the future is actually holding up for our digital economy?
Well, actually, I have just started working with Overtech. This is an Estonian, I guess you can call it a startup that is revolutionizing the way we see transport. So we basically build autonomous vehicles and organize the logistics so that there is no need for personal cars for the last mile delivery and in many locations. So it will hopefully change a lot climate-wise, but also will make transport much more convenient. Um, Other than that, I believe that it is clear that there is still a lot of room for ambitious companies that are tackling climate change, but also contactless. I mean, the virus that we are living with is showing how important it is to be able to deliver goods and services, and also people for that matter, contactlessly. And this is also something where autonomous vehicles, delivery robots, different types of technological solutions can come to help. Also, Estonian experience during COVID pandemic has been very useful in terms of getting public services online. We have used digital ID for 18 years already, and all the documents I need to apply for, all the transactions I need to do with both private and public sector, I can do right here from my office or from my home, and I use digital ID and digital signature for those services. For us, it's an everyday habit already. We don't go, even without COVID, we don't almost ever go to any public offices for any documents. We use it digitally. But now we have a huge amount of incoming questions from very different countries who say, please teach us how can we start doing the same things? How can we get our public and private sector services digitalized?
Oh, perfect. So if you can give us a little bit of background and to the listeners about what you actually did in terms of the e-residency program and also the digitalization of the signatures and all these like public services, it would be really great.
E-residency is basically the Estonian version of identity, which is electronic identity given to non-Estonians or people who don't live in Estonia. So you can live in Spain, you can be of American.
I actually have it, by the way. I live in Canada and I have an e-residency.
Or you can live in Canada, you can be of any nationality, and you can establish a company in Estonia, you can run a company in Estonia, you can do it all digitally. So it's a location independent service. The idea is to provide the digital tools needed for global business to people who are by nature like digital nomads, or they are not necessarily dependent, or their work is not dependent on a single location or the place where they physically are. And again, because of COVID, it has shown that room for digital ID and digital services to run your company is obviously there. Now, having said that, the e-residency we introduced when I was Prime Minister of the country 6 years ago, but already for that time, we had for 12 years the digital identity for Estonian citizens and residents. And we had used, for example, logging into to fill our tax declaration ever since the year 2000 already. So basically for 20 years, Estonians have enjoyed automated and digital services. And in 2014, 6 years ago, we decided that, well, we are ready to export it. We are ready to offer this to non-Estonians globally. And so far, we have around 75,000 e-residents, and some of them are not using the services at all. Some of them just tried it out, but many of them actually do business in Estonia, pay taxes in Estonia, generate revenue. So it has been calculated by the e-residency program that the annual income to Estonian tax authority is around 50 million euros every year, which for a small country is serious money.
Dan?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds really interesting because we have a lot of clients and customers from the Asia Pacific region. Originally, I'm from Australia, so we do know quite a lot about Estonian initiatives when it comes to digitalization. But what I was interested in, probably would love to ask you, is I have a very big interest regarding the governments moving towards the repositories on the blockchain. So, like, you know, I previously worked for an Australian government, and I know that there is a lot of bureaucracy in the government when it comes to the old software programs. The database is very old as well. It's been exchanging between different departments in a very old-fashioned way. So just curious, because obviously you worked in the top niche of the political field, and obviously you know that many European countries are considering to implement digital euro as an initiative to move towards the blockchain. But what about creating like a sort of, I wouldn't say decentralized database, but I would say centralized database on the blockchain in the repository field? Like, do you have any sort of thoughts about it, or what are your thinking?
Well, Estonian system as such, Estonian e-government, if we can call it one system, by design is very uncentralized, decentralized, meaning that, you know, we started with it before blockchain as a word was invented. As I said, we introduced many of the principal design elements almost 20 years ago. And how it was built was basically each service is owned or taken care of by one or another government unit. It can be ministry, it can be some sort of office, but they're usually like public entities. And we made all those information bases communicate with each other through a central layer that we call X-road. So basically, it's just a crossing that can allow data to move from one system to another. Of course, this can only be limited by laws. So in principle, for example, I can give you this kind of example, that if I as a citizen move to from one municipality to another, I log into the population registry, I change my address there, I sign it, voila. Then when tax authority needs to know where I live, because part of my income tax goes to the municipality, then they don't ask me where I live, they don't ask me the date to fill in, they will just ping the population register. So they have the right to know where I live, so population register will give them this information.
Right.
But they cannot, for example, ask my doctor anything about my health, because tax authority doesn't need to know that. Or my doctor cannot ask tax authority about my income, because it's not her business. But they can both ask a population register where I live. And in terms of blockchain, we have experimented with that quite a lot, and we have been using it to keep data safe. But also, I mean, decentralization is a very important concept, even like beyond blockchain for a government system, because if we would keep all the critical data in one location or in one system, it would be so much easier or so much like prone to attacks or anything that can go wrong. So Estonian system, as I said, is first of all decentralized by design, as different hosts or different owners of the services, and also to be location independent. We have established data embassies in different countries. So basically, how it goes is that we have agreement with another country that part of a server room in this country, let's say 5 square meters or 10 square meters, is considered to be Estonian territory, just like embassy, and Estonian laws apply. So the government of this country cannot have any input, or they cannot have a look at what is going on in the servers, or they cannot like run any legal actions towards that. It belongs to Estonia. It is ratified by both parliaments, and we have many of our most important registers basically working in different countries, and whatever can happen to Estonia, we can switch the registers on and working from, let's say, Luxembourg or any other country.
But sort of speaking of logic behind it, obviously, I understand you've just mentioned that government is interested in your privacy. They respect the privacy of individual, but at the same time, we see circumstances in which private companies like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and we all know that. Like when you say things, for example, I would like to buy a car, like let's say Mercedes. Then later on, you check your Facebook and you see a lot of Mercedes ads on your the history. That's kind of a breach of privacy in a way of, without asking Facebook to give you any ads, they still give you ads because they listen you, and because the government wants to, they want the security, they want the safety of their citizens. So it's kind of like in the interest of the country to have an access to certain things, to know a little bit more about the individual. If this individual is any, if he has any relationships with people, for example, from, let's say, radical Islam, like, those terroristic groups, or those people who are, for example, what happened in Austria recently. Yeah, we saw that a peaceful place in Austria became a nightmare for local citizens when, Shugan people were just running around and shooting people. So that's kind of like a government lost the control over a certain number of people. So eventually, what I want to say is that government wants to have a certain control over individuals to keep their safety as a top priority. So what are you saying about decentralization? It kind of gives access to the government in a way of protecting their own citizens, but at the same time, how do you think it's going to protect the privacy of citizens? Because that's a very, very sensitive topic, as you understand.
Of course,
people,
data security and privacy are the most important cornerstones for any public service that is taken digital, or not taken digital for that matter. Data can leak from paper archives as well, as we know. But trying to answer us as directly as possible. First of all, we use social media because we get something from it. They have managed to get the service so good that we know that there is some, let's say, privacy issues, or they can look or can make some judgments based on what we are searching or what we are looking for. But we do it anyways because the service is so desirable or so attractive. Now, with public services, it is different. I think it's fundamentally important to create trust to any citizen, and to design the system this way that there cannot be any data leaks or data like meddling with the data or anything like that. So how to do it? Let me just give an example of very sensitive data, which is health. In theory, any doctor, or let's start like that. In Estonia, all the medical case summaries, all the analyses, all the diagnoses, all the prescriptions, everything is digitalized. And once that is all digital, any doctor can, in theory, look at my health data at any moment. And usually, let's say 99.9% of the cases, this is a desirable effect because when something happens to me and I'm taken to hospital, I want the doctors to know as much as possible from my previous health conditions. They can see my blood type, they can see my diagnosis, they can see all sorts of things, what kind of prescription drugs I'm taking or anything like that. They have it all there. But in some cases, it can be so that, let's say a journalist who has very bad intentions bribes a doctor to look at some celebrity's health records and make some part of it public. So to avoid that, what we have done is we have designed the system this way that I, as a patient, can at any time log into the portal and look who has looked at my health data. And if there is,
Right.
let's say, a random doctor snooping around and looking at my diagnosis, then I can press charges because it's not. I haven't given a consent to have a look at my health data, and if it's made public, then it's a serious violation, and the chance of getting caught is very, very high. And the same basically applies to almost all public services. I can myself check at any time who has taken interest in my data and why they have done so. And if there is any anomaly, then I can press charges or I can report violation. So
to get an access, sorry to disturb you, to get an access to these data, do you have to have a certain hashtag, or how do I get an access to it? Because I understand it's kind of encrypted within the public services, so you can't just walk in and get all access.
Yeah, you cannot. Of course, you can. You can log in with your ID card or mobile ID. So basically, it's the digital ID. You can log in, and if you have the right, if you have been given the right to, let's say you are a doctor, then you have the right to look at patients'
Right.
data.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And if you are, let's say, working for tax authority, then you have some right to look at people's tax records, income, so forth. So basically, yeah, the way you log in, we use our digital ID for everything because this is the most secure. And you just you as a citizen have some rights. You as a civil servant have other rights. You as let's say doctor have third kind of rights. So your roles can change, but your ID is the same.
And so with the digital economy that you guys have established, and now that we have a COVID economy, how far do you think that we have actually kind of like further gone towards like digitalization for the whole kind of like global system? And you said that now governments of different countries come to you guys and ask for advice that how you actually establish this system. So if you can also elaborate more on that, would be great.
Well, for example, many countries have now not anymore sent digital contract or like paper contracts or paper documents to each other. Instead, they have done something even more insecure. They have written hand-scribbled signatures on some sort of PDF documents, which is so easy to falsify, which is so easy to cheat, that it's ridiculously unsafe. Whereas also there are some countries in European Union or who have recently left European Union also that have still utility bill as the primary way of authenticating, or at least one of the way of authenticating people. So with that, if we compare with that digital ID, which has proper key, proper encryption, is probably a million times more secure. And it's only logical that the world is starting to use safer ways to send documents, to make agreements, and even with or without physical contact. I would say that the signing anything with a pen or with a finger on a screen, it's ridiculously unsafe. I mean, 10-year-olds can falsify their parents' signatures to get away from trouble at school. Why can't criminals do that? And why can we think that it is in any way safe? It's the basically caveman's time of signing. 3 X's on the wall of the cave. I think we have learned or we have developed a lot since that time, and 2021 the world should find more secure ways to sign than pen.
Right. So how do you think that now the COVID that actually has happened, how far have we come towards digitalization for the whole economy? And we can see all these apps are blooming, and the startups that are actually in this digital platforms especially are very successful now.
Well, I am absolutely certain that after COVID, we will not go back to the exactly same world as it was before. People are much more open to e-commerce. People are much more careful in terms of contacts, and if they can avoid contacts, they would prefer that. People have learned that video conferencing is a good way of meeting. It doesn't substitute all human interaction, obviously, but still it's a way. It's a way of doing things. People have experienced all sorts of different e-commerce solutions, and I'm sure that all sectors that are dealing with contactless, all sectors that are dealing with safety, with health, AI, using AI to make or take smarter decisions. These are the sectors that will change dramatically, and in many cases they have already changed dramatically. We are seeing a lot of investments also in Estonian startup sector this year. We have our 5th unicorn, PyDrive, officially sold or exited. We have lots of companies that either are dealing with autonomous technologies or contactless services that I could say are booming or doing very, very well despite the crisis, or perhaps because of the crisis.
Because of the crisis, right?
Yeah, I think it was a good question, Azam. The question that came to my mind straight away was, you just mentioned about the obviously the social interaction between people, and COVID-19 has changed quite a lot of things for people. So we can't see each other face to face anymore. We can't go to the conferences anymore, fly to another country and sign a deal or execute a certain process. Like, from your experience, because of the COVID-19, do you reckon that people will have more trust in signing and executing deals over the internet these days? Or because previously, obviously, by contacting each other via Zoom or Skype, it doesn't necessarily imply the obviously the conclusion of the deal, because people have more trust when they see each other face to face.
Well, I don't think that we can substitute trust generation with digital tools only. But what I can say is that it is absolutely certain that anything that is written with the hand can be falsified so much easier than an encrypted stamp on a file. So if we take this as precondition, it's absolutely logical that we need to use digital signatures, digital tools, digital logins. I mean, I think people have learned throughout the time that password 00 or password 111 or 123 is not safe enough. So they have learned to generate, or many of us have learned to generate more complicated passwords that are more difficult to guess. The same will eventually happen with the signature as well. And I think that if we want to understand what kind of transformation that brings along, I would just give one example, a very trivial one. Imagine a world without credit card. Credit card actually is not a very secure device. It has all the numbers you need to purchase something on one page or one side, and then you turn it, and there is the magic secret number on the other side that no criminal could ever guess. That look at the other side, and then there you get this, so to say, secret number or a special code. But anyways, the numbers are written on this plastic. If you use that to enter it to your Bolt app or Uber app, if you enter it to Airbnb app, if you enter the details to any basically e-commerce solution, you can make transactions internationally. You can purchase goods. Okay, Amazon, for example, you can just enter your credit card details, and you can make either regular payments or buy stuff. So this is basically giving access to your wallet across the internet, and it's considered to be safe enough. Even though I would say that credit card in today's world is not as safe as it could be. It could be much more safer solutions used. Having said that, now we need to have something similar to offer access to your identity. So instead of showing your ID or passport to a human being, we basically need a way to make the computer know that, yes, this is you, make the e-commerce shop or not even e-commerce shop, but the other party that you have to sign a deal with, make to him or her know for sure that this is you. And this we can do basically in the same manner, creating a digital tool for that. Only I would argue that giving access to your identity needs to be even safer than giving access to your wallet, because with your identity or with your signature, you can do much more harm potentially than just your wallet.
Well, you mentioned the Visa card. I wanted to ask you, so now that like we have decentralization, and obviously there's also a lot of like collection of data by all these big banks and big companies out there. What do you think of a bankless society where we are not kind of attached to the fiat currency anymore, and also the central banks and the treasury, and the government?
Well, I think it's important to add. I think it's important to add about the DeFi as well, the centralized finance, because that's related to the bankless. Yeah,
exactly, decentralized finance.
Well, that's an extremely complicated question, because I believe in digital transactions, and I think once the banks understand that there is a need for very quick, instant movement of value, let's say, from one person to another, without borders, without time delays, without cost. Once they understand that, and once they provide that, then they are much more likely to survive and keep these transaction services in the banking. So far, transactions across border, especially across currency, are still hugely expensive. I mean, if you look at the two different, if I want to send, let's say, Canadian dollars to you, the difference that you get and I pay is probably like 4 or 5%. And this is two things where the difference comes from. One is the bank's fee, but the other one, which is perhaps even larger, is the exchange rate difference. They are not changing with the middle rate. And the same applies if I come to Canada and pay with my Estonian bank card, which has euros on it. Again, the exchange rate is hugely expensive. And because of this, there have been emerging very, very successful fintech companies. One of them, probably one of the first also in this sector, is TransferWise, another Estonian unicorn, and they precisely target this question. Now, whether people will choose crypto over fiat massively anytime soon, well, that remains to be seen. I think today still transferring crypto is or accessing wallets is still relatively difficult. I mean, it can be revolutionized in this way that you send money as easily as you send text messages. In theory, it could be done, and especially there is no government or state borders in the crypto world. But whether this will substitute fiat anytime soon, I would be a bit skeptical, because we are still very, very far from that. And despite the hope by many or hype even that this will happen soon a few years ago, well, this hasn't happened. And by that, I'm not saying there wouldn't be very, very good use cases for tokens. There definitely are. There could be very interesting transactions being done with tokens, perhaps tokenizing assets like real estate, tokenizing assets like cruise ships. It could be revolutionizing not only money, but also stock exchanges, for example.
Right.
If there is enough trust in this, that the tokens act as securities, and they cannot be manipulated, and the people understand how it works, and there needs to be masses of people understanding how it works, well, then I think bigger chance than substituting money is actually substituting traditional stocks. And in some cases this has happened, but I mean, there is still a lot of room. And then also in stock exchanges, I mean, the system is very, very difficult. The transaction fees are relatively high, especially if you buy in small quantities, and definitely this can be disrupted. I mean, that's
definitely space for disruption there.
Absolutely, yeah, I say that.
Dan, what were you saying?
No, I was just basically touch base on the fact that we can see that the countries are moving towards the digitalization. Like China was a big initiator of a digital yuan, which creates that transparency that people need these days. And that's why, like, I'm very curious about the fact that there is an older generation that doesn't really know how to use cryptocurrency wallets and ledgers and Trezors and a whole bunch of them. And because it's very difficult. It is difficult, and you're absolutely right. But at the same time, we have a younger generation that can become a millionaire just because they're dancing on the TikTok at the age of 14 years old. So, we are having this massive X and Y generation transformation. And eventually, in 10 or 20 years, we have to get to the point when people ask for more transparency. Because unfortunately, when you look at those, centralized banks as big dinosaurs in the industry, and they're like glitches in the system, like you sometimes, you access your account and you have a negative balance just because the system glitched, and the numbers on your account glitched as well. Or you don't know how much money the government printed these days, because we can see that the US Treasury is just printing money nonstop without really giving people any idea as to how much gold reserves they have, or what's the reason why they print so much money. So
perhaps
what do you think about? Yeah, that's right. So eventually paper money becomes like a toilet paper. It's worthless. Sorry, it's
But
worth.
it was
Yeah.
actually it was very worthy during COVID.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But effect of a recession will kick in eventually. That's what we all know. The more money they print, the prices will go up as well for products, for food, and for hospitality services and anything. So, what are your thoughts about that? Like, what do you reckon? The government will actually will challenge it, or they will just keep going and doing whatever they want?
I mean, obviously, there is very, very strong pressure of fiscal stimulus during this COVID crisis. In some cases, it is very much understandable and justified. For example, investing additional money to healthcare and also spending more money to keep the jobs from disappearing. So these moves are needed, and hopefully they are temporary. But if they are not, if they are permanent, then all the or most of the problems that you were describing can actually occur. But having said that, I still think that it's a question of people's trust. As long as they trust in governments printing and issuing coins or notes, then the fiat system will function. And big part of it, of course, already now is digital, because I personally, I almost never have any cash on me. I always pay with my phone or with my bank cards, and we have to agree that also paying in fiat has become so much easier, so much more like without the hassle of having your coins and paper notes. I can pay with my card or maybe with my watch,
Exactly.
Apple Watch.
Exactly.
So that if this kind of innovation happens in the, so to say, traditional world, that will keep people using money as we know it, or the fiat, and not looking so much alternatives. But if the transactions are very high, the costs are high, they are not happening in real time, then people will be looking for alternatives. And which way the world will go, I honestly don't know. I really don't know. I think that, as I said, that crypto will be used more in the future, as there is potential for tokenization of assets. But if it will ever substitute money, well, it remains to be seen, and I'm not the one who knows it for sure, one way or another.
Maybe another pandemic can show us, or revolutionize it at least.
That's right.
Perfect. If you have time, I can ask you another question, just one more. But if you don't,
Okay.
that would be.
Yeah,
So,
let's have one more question.
Perfect. Well, since Estonia is a great country, protecting the rights of the citizens and protecting their data and privacy and everything, the discussion that is actually lingering these days is the vaccine. And if the governments of each country is going to enforce that, for example, if they're going to be kind of like initiating a digital ID for vaccination, what is your opinion about this issue and the concern, and how do you think that would be managed?
Well, digital tools can help in this tremendous logistical exercise. And why I say logistical exercise, because giving vaccine, and with all the respect to the health workers, this is one of the easiest things that the health workers are doing, because it's just an injection. The professional can do it in a couple of seconds, then give you a Band-Aid and say goodbye. But we have to keep track who has been vaccinated, what vaccines have been used, what kind of who has the right to get the vaccine first, who is I don't know, who cannot have the vaccine for whatever health reasons. This all needs to be tracked or understood, and digital tools are ideal for that. In Estonia, we have had already for I think around 10 years the thing we called immunity passport, which basically is one part of our e-health, and I can log into my e-health at any time and see what vaccines I have been given. I have been given, by the way, a lot of vaccines because I visited in 2016 Africa because our Estonian soldiers were there. I went to countries where you need to vaccinate against different diseases, and I don't remember all the vaccines I got, but if I need to know, I can check it there. My doctor can check it there, and it works seamlessly. So in terms of organizing this huge logistical exercise, having digital information base is essential. But of course, it's not possible to introduce it with a couple of weeks. In Estonia, the foundation is already there, and to add one layer is just very simple. But in principle, yes, having a digital immunization overview of each and every person, it's hugely helpful, definitely.
Perfect, thank you. Dan, do you have any ending notes?
No, to be honest, it was perfect. It was a great time, to be honest. Thank you so much. That was a pleasure to hear such a valuable opinion from your side. And I mean, you have an astonishing experience in that field. So we've got to learn from you.
Thank you very much. And let's hope that this vaccine will come close enough so that we can finally start meeting other people again, and the travel can start safely as well. So I would be happy seeing both of you at conferences anywhere in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, and
Thank
Happy
you so
New
much,
Year
Taavi.
in advance.
Thank you. Bye.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Bye bye.